This week's episode of Brains on Games is about a speed counting game. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode I'm excited to show you a game that was sent to me by the folks over at TheOp, who've created a whole bunch of games that I really enjoyed. But this is a quick counting race sort of a game called Ratuki. Ratuki is a game you can play with between 2 and 5 players. It's okay for kids age 7 and up, and a game plays in only about 15 minutes, so it is a pretty quick one in a fairly small box. Let's talk about Ratuki. What is this game all about? Each player in Ratuki is going to have their own separate deck of cards, so they choose a card based on the colors on the back. I've picked out the blue and green ones, but there's green and blue cards. There's all different colors in here because there's up to 5 players. The cards... All of the decks have the same cards in them, and there are 5 different suits. They're all cards numbered 1 to 5, and they might be dice, or fingers, or digits. It might be the word, the name of the number spelled out, or they might be little tally marks to count up to 5. So I've pulled out one of each here. You also get a Ratuki card, and that's a wild card. What you're doing in this game, everyone's playing at the same time. It's completely simultaneous. There are a couple of things to be aware of at the beginning. You're only ever allowed to have 3 cards in your hand at a time, and one hand is for holding your cards and the other hand is for playing cards. You're not allowed to switch or play cards with both hands at the same time or play 2 cards at once. It's always one hand holds and one hand plays, and then you may be drawing more cards from the deck. What you're doing in this game, everyone is playing simultaneously, and you're trying to be the one who's able to claim the most stacks of cards. There can be up to one stack of cards for each player, and you start a stack by playing the number 1. And like you saw earlier, those numbers can be represented in 5 different ways. So you're quickly trying to look at your hand of 3 cards and you're trying to figure out, oh, I grabbed too many and I didn't shuffle these up very well, but you're quickly trying to figure out what the numbers are and play them onto the table. If you're playing a 2-player game like we usually do, you can only have 2 different stacks and they always have to start with the number 1. Let me see if I can find a 1 in here. I've pulled out a couple of number 1s, so in a 2-player game you might have a couple of stacks like that, and you're just as fast as you can trying to play on top of those stacks cards that are 1 higher or 1 lower. Now it only goes from 1 to 5, so there's nothing lower than the number 1. There's no zeros in the deck. You'd immediately play a 2, but on top of a 2 you could play another 1, or you could play a 3. So the stacks are going to go up and down. As soon as you slap a 5 on top of a 4, then you can grab that stack of cards. It comes over into your score pile, and the number of cards you have there is going to determine your score at the end of the game. The idea is you're trying to get rid of all of these cards. Now, with only 3 cards at a time and only a couple of piles in a 2-player game, you might find that you don't have any that work. Well, you can play cards face down into sort of a junk pile so that you can draw another one and always keep your hand of 3 cards. So if you don't have any useful ones, you can discard them and pull another one. You can do that as many times as you need to, and you're cycling through while the other players are still playing cards onto these stacks. The Ratuki card that I showed you earlier, this is a wild card, so it can go anywhere, and as soon as you play it, you get to claim that stack. So this might be a good card to hang on to because some of the piles might be going up and down. You might have a 3 and a 4 and then another 3 and a 2, and it might go, you might have a great big stack, and then the Ratuki card will allow you to grab it. I think there's only 2 of these cards in each deck. I didn't count them all out. I don't recall off the top of my head. And that is it. It's just a crazy race to claim as many of those cards as possible. As soon as a player runs out of cards, he yells or she yells that they're out, everything stops. At that point, you start counting up your points. So the number of cards in your score pile is the number of points you get minus the cards you have left over in your junk pile and your deck of cards. So if you haven't been able to play too many of these, if you're really slow, you're going to go down and have negative points. You can only go down to 0, so you're not really going to go negative, but you're going to lose points the more cards that you have left when the other player finishes their deck. The play continues until somebody reaches 100 points. I mean, you could just play a quick round and only play one to see who's going to win, but typically you would continue until you get 100 points, and then it's game over. So this is clearly a game where you're doing some rapid symbol translation, really. Rapid automatic naming would be the skill if we were going to use the psychological term for it. Rapid automatic naming often refers to quickly and automatically recognizing letters. It's an important skill for reading speed, but you're doing the same thing here with numbers. In addition to just the rapid recognition of the symbols on your cards, there's also a translation that your brain has to do very quickly because the numbers are represented in so many different ways. There's 5 different suits of cards that represent the same number, and that involves some very basic quantitative reasoning. Part of quantitative reasoning is not just about being able to do calculations, it's about translating math information from one form to another. So you've got the speed, the motor speed and processing speed, but really it's rapid automatic naming, and then you've got basic quantitative reasoning in terms of the symbol translation that you're doing in order to play those cards. And that is Ratuki. It's a super quick game that involves those skills. If you have any questions about this game or comments, you can leave them in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully I'll see you next time.